Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Education for Tuesday, January 28th, 2025. I would like to start out by reminding everyone that this meeting will be live streamed as per Policy 7. Regular and special meetings of the board may be streamed live, archived, and accessed online. The board reserves, at its sole discretion via motion at any meeting, the right to not stream live or archive a meeting or a portion of a meeting. Further, the board reserves the right to edit any recorded portion of the meeting. I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the Langley Board of Education at 7:00 p.m. and start out by first acknowledging that the Langley School District is located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Matsqui, Katzie, and Semiahmoo First Nations. We gather here tonight in an understanding of the importance of Yayastil working together and Natsamat, Letsamat, uniting ourselves with one mind, one heart, to ensure that we support and inspire all learners to reach their full potential. Before we move on to our first item of business, I would like to make some introductions of trustees, our staff, and partner groups here this evening. On my far left, Trustee Neufeld, Trustee Rye, Secretary Treasurer Brian Isley, myself, Candy Ashdown, Chair, Superintendent Mal Gill, Trustee Holly Dickinson, and we joke about forgetting each other's names out here. Sometimes it happens to me almost every time. And Trustee Ward. Also joining us here this evening, we have Deputy Superintendent Woody Bradford, Assistant Superintendent Lisa Langeberry, Assistant Superintendent Marcello Moino, Assistant Secretary Treasurer Shin Chand, Director of Communications Joanne Abshire, Executive Assistant Judy Swanson, Technical Support Specialist 3 Paul Balboa, Technical Support Specialist 3 Vincent Montefrio, District Principal of Instructional Services Kendra Simonetto, District Principal Instructional Services and Early Learning Charlene Redicott, District Principal Aboriginal Education Mike Pugh, Principal Walnut Grove Secondary School Jeremy Linden, QP 1260 Acting Vice President Marlene Dickinson, DPAC President Jennifer Piper, DPAC Vice President Tisha Kraft, LP VPA Vice President Kathy Gracie, LTA Vice President Nancy Peterson. And I hope I didn't forget anyone, and my apologies if I did. Thank you for being here this evening. So next on our next item of business is a report from in camera. And we discussed personnel, property, and legal. Trustees, you have the consent agenda in front of you. Could I please have a mover for the recommended motion that the Board of Education adopts the consent agenda as provided? Moved by Trustee Neufeld, seconded by Trustee Dickinson. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Next, we have consideration of the agenda. Do I have a mover, please, for the recommended motion that the agenda be approved as presented? Moved by Trustee Neufeld, seconded by Trustee Rye. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Next on our agenda is superintendent's reports. 6.1 early years programs and childcare. I will pass this over to you, Superintendent Gill.
Thank you, Chair Ashdown. This evening we have District Principal Charlene Redicott here to present. Trustees have had the opportunity through a strategic education meeting to hear this report perhaps in greater depth, but it was important for us to share this information with public as well, just around the work that we've been doing around before and after school care and care around younger students below the ages of 5 during the day as well. So at this time, I'd like to ask our district principal to please come up and present for us this evening. So thank you.
It's my pleasure to be here this evening and to share with you a little bit about my work working with the early years programs in Langley. And today I'm going to there we go. Okay. Today I'm going to give you an overview of some of the early learning opportunities that we provide within the district, as well as some of the programs that we use to ladder into and support K-12 learning. And really all of our early years programs, the goal is to support that kindergarten transition into school and just to help our youngest learners be as successful as possible. So in regards to childcare, we have two models that we run within the district. The first one is seamless kindergarten, and the second one is before and after school care. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about both of those programs. All of our childcare programs are licensed through Fraser Health in the same way that private childcares are licensed. And this means we follow all health regulations, all of the regulations laid out by the Ministry of Health, and we do have inspections once a year of all of our sites, and we're happy to work together with Fraser Health to provide the best quality of care that we can. So Seamless Kindergarten is in its third year as a pilot. It operates in 2 schools. And the unique things about Seamless Kindergarten are that it provides before and after school care options, as well as additional supports from ECE staff during the day. And really the goal is to provide seamless transitions for kids as they move from home to childcare to their school day and then back to childcare and home. We're minimizing those transitions for them. And some unique things about it are that it's staffed by qualified ECEs, focuses on kindergarten, which means it has a low ratio of adults to children with a cap of 12, and it does provide additional supports during the day, which is quite unique. I'm moving ahead too quickly. Oops, sorry. Back. One more.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This one here.
Yeah.
Before and after school care programs are staffed by SEAs that work within the school. And typically we have 2 staff that work the morning shift and 3 after school. And their goal is really to provide the best quality of care that we can. And they take their work very seriously and spend a lot of time planning really engaging crafts and center time and games and snack time and playtime, and just really can't speak highly enough of the staff that we have working in those programs. Our sites that we currently run before and after school care, Seamless runs at Nikumekel and Parkside, and before and after school at Parkside Short Read, and it opened in September at Douglas Park. And if we total all of those spaces together, we have 90 children that we provide childcare each week. There are some benefits to us running childcare as a district. As you know, we face a lot of space pressures in Langley with a growing community, and running programs as a district allows us flexible use of space, as we can use spaces for childcare that are used in other ways during the day. And a dedicated child space would generally be needed for private daycares, and we can operate in a more flexible way. It also provides that seamlessness for children. So both in terms of staffing, there's a continuity of staffing, a continuity of space, continuity of support plans with IEP strategies that are in place during the day and in the after school hours, and consistency in programming. And it really allows us as a school system to extend learning opportunities into the before and after school time. So we use many different spaces in the school. We really work with whatever is available in the school. We run seamless kindergarten in the classroom, and then we use other spaces to enhance their opportunities in the library or gym. And then before and after school, we operate in a library in one school, a resource room, and then at Douglas Park, we operate in a classroom that is used in other ways during the school day. And as I've mentioned a few times, really, our goal is to provide seamless care for our students, to allow them that one transition into school in the morning, caring for them during the before school time, and then one transition into home after they've had after school care. And so it really supports all of our students in the best way that we can. We do have plans to grow for the next school year. With the new school opening in Willoughby, there's significant childcare needs in the Willoughby community. And so we will be opening a district run childcare program in Josette Dandurand, and we've already started working towards that, as it will be a big project. And we're also aware that additional spaces will be needed at Langley Meadows with the catchment changes, and we're working together with the school and the current provider to come up with a solution in that community as well. I thought I'd share briefly just about two of our other programs that we run under our early years banner. We have just before or day before preschool programs. We run one at Douglas Park, one at Donna Gabriel, and we have 27 students at Douglas Park, 12 at Donna Gabriel. And next Tuesday on February 4th, we'll be opening our third site, which will be 20 spaces in the Aldergrove community that will have students from Parkside and Shortreed, and even probably one from Coghlan. So really serving the whole community. Just one more thing about JB4, that really the goal of that program is to support our youngest learners as they transition into school, and it's really helping them get used to the school environment before they enter kindergarten, and it just has been very successful for our youngest students. We also offer Strong Start. We have 9 Strong Start programs that operate in 6 locations spread around Langley. There's afternoon and morning sessions offered at some sites, and really rich learning opportunities, lots of hands-on learning, parent involvement, grandparents attend. They have outdoor learning opportunities, and just really rich opportunities for all of our little ones before they head into school. We do also work together with some of our community partners to put on early years events. And these happen throughout the school year and are really intended to support children and families in building connections to the school before entering kindergarten. Our biggest event is Child Day. We've got that coming up on Saturday, May 3rd at RE Mountain Secondary, and we're working together with Inclusion Langley, the Métis Nation, Encompass, Langley Community Services, and the Center for Child Development on that project, as well as our early learning staff. So it's really an exciting day and very well attended events in the past. So in summary, we do provide a broad variety of different programs that meet the needs of different families. And our programs are spread throughout the district, providing access to different neighborhoods to early learning programming. And we've worked towards expanding childcare spaces to meet the needs in our community, and increasing spaces in our preschool as well, as we see that need growing in our community. Questions?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We had the opportunity a couple of weeks ago to have you at our strategic plan education committee meeting, and so just wanted to thank you for being there as well. And lots of great questions were asked by trustees, and so thank you for coming to this meeting as well. And I was so pleased to see that, because we certainly heard the need for childcare in our catchment consultation in the Willoughby area. So exciting. Do trustees have any questions? Trustee Neufeld.
Yes, hi. You'd mentioned 90. Is that, sorry, 90 seats or 90 students?
Yes. So we currently have 90 students enrolled. So our Parkside program is full. Shortreed is full. We do have spaces in the Douglas Park site. We could probably add another 10 or 15 students there.
Are there wait lists for those schools that are full?
We have wait lists at Parkside.
Okay.
Yes.
And when spots become available, how do children get chosen off the wait list? Is it,
It's first come, first serve, and we do have part-time and full-time, and so sometimes we're able to work something out with two part-time
Okay.
students taking up one spot.
absolutely. I do have one more, but I'll let it go around.
Don't see any other questions? Are there? Nope. So go ahead, trustee Neufeld.
Great. I guess this is more of a question for Brian. With the expansion of potential expansions into the two new schools, or one new school and one into Langley Meadows, how does that affect the budget? Is there space for it? Is there?
Well, most of it is covered through the fees that parents pay for it. We do have to subsidize a little bit on some of the SEA costs if there are students that do need some of that.
Any other questions from trustees? No. Thank you so much. Okay, trustees, do I have a mover, please, for the recommended motion that the Board of Education receives the report on early years programs and childcare for information as presented? Moved by trustee Dickinson, seconded by trustee Ward. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay, next, 6.2, careers and transitions, actions and data. And am I just moving over to, okay, so Deputy Superintendent Woody Bradford.
Thank you, everyone. Tonight, we get the pleasure of presenting information on careers, specific actions around transitions and data. And trustees will know that each year we come back to share with you just the results we've had for 23-24 and also update you on the strategies that we're using as a system to continue to move forward when we examine and look at transitions. So tonight, I'm fortunate enough to work alongside three colleagues. I have with me District Principal of Aboriginal Services and Education, Mr. Mike Pugh, District Principal of Instructional Services, Ms. Kendra Simonetto, and Principal of Walnut Grove, Mr. Jeremy Linden. And our presentation tonight really feeds well off the presentation Ms. Redekop did when we think about before and after school care. And you noticed in her presentation, she said a lot about seamless transitions. And so when we dig down deep into the data and we start to examine the word transitions, it begins to invite some really meaningful conversations to have as educators, as we work collaboratively together with parents and all stakeholders and rights holders to try and make the transitions as seamless as we can through the system. And we all know that when we start this journey, it's important to start at the center of the journey, and the center of the journey is the students that we provide services for each and every day. And we recognize that each one of our students has their own story, and that story is attached to a number of different layers in terms of their personal lives. And within those personal lives, there are transitions that happen to students in terms of inside and outside of school. So for us as a system, how do we ensure we actually define what transitions look like as we work through the system collectively to support their journey, to focus in on their strengths and their gifts, so that as they transition through elementary, middle, and secondary schools, it's successful and they see themselves in each of these transitions being supported in a very caring and nurturing way. So for us, if we start at the center of the story and transitions being the work that we do, we bring it to life through three different pillars that are built through the Framework for Enhancing Student Learning. So when I say transitions, you will know in the Framework for Enhancing Student Learning, it is connected to careers. Yet we also notice that transition is also connected to human and social development and also intellectual development. So the three pillars that sit inside of our Framework for Enhancing Student Learning really do rest on the idea of how successful we are with the transitions throughout the system. And trustees will remember last year that Assistant Superintendent Marcello Wino led an engaging presentation on transitions with a focus on intellectual development and human social development through the work that was going on at Wicks and the work that was going on at North Otter. So we continue to expand that story and look through the lens of careers and transitions tonight to add the extra pillar to you in the conversation around what we're doing to support students as they seamlessly work through the system within our schools. So if we open the pages of this book and we define human and social development, we find at the heart of it is that connection, that ability for our students to feel connection within the schools, within the classroom, within the system. That's where human and social development lives within the story. If you look at the pages of the story, within inside those pages are words that are engaging for students to engage in activities within a classroom and learning opportunities. That is where the mind comes into play and the intellectual development is working throughout the system. And then as you turn the pages, careers are the ones that flip the pages for us, creating opportunities for life chances and career opportunities for us to really dig deep into each and every story. And there are 26,000 individual stories that are defined by successful transitions. It is really important for us to consider this. When you look at this image, you think about how overwhelming it could be to be standing at a bus stop with all these different options in terms of which bus do I get onto. When you think about the journey pre-K all the way through grade 12, think about the individual story of a child and how many transitions they have to go through in the system alone. There may be some students that get on 3 buses in their journey in elementary, middle, and secondary. We recognize they may move seats within those buses because they change grades or courses as they go through that journey. Some other students may have many more transitions than just 3 schools in one family of schools. And that's the transitions within the system. What happens outside of the bookends of the day in terms of how many things that are going on in students' lives. So we really have to dig deep into when we say transitions to what do we really mean and how does it impact each one of our students. And when we think about developing the 3 pillars of intellectual development, human and social, and careers and transitions, in that backpack has to be the tools for that student to thrive. And we have to continue to have the supports in place to care for and nurture that student throughout the system as they choose the bus they get on to transition to the next stage in terms of their journey in school. So what guides us? What is the compass for the work that we do when we think about transitions and we link it to careers, intellectual development, and human and social development? This is our compass. This is the map that we use to ensure that we actually are developing the skills necessary for students to seamlessly transition throughout each level of our schools, each course, each grade, whatever journey in terms of they're on in terms of successfully transitioning through all the way through pre-K to grade 12. Social emotional learning, obviously we know the human and social development lives in that block. Instructional practice, the intellectual development, and systems and structures lives within that those blocks. And careers touches on each one of those blocks. So the combination of 3 pillars is bound by the Installing Our Schools model that clearly in Langley, we know that that's the compass and the work that we need to do to really define what we do around transitions to make it successful for each student. So we dug deep into the data from 22-23 to really look at our framework for enhancing student learning and to really dig deep into the specifics around careers and transitions. And so as we dug into that as a district and we looked at our framework for enhancing student learning, we began to build a plan specifically in each one of those 3 pillars and dig deeper into careers and transitions. So tonight, you get the opportunity to hear from the systems level from Mrs. Simonetto what we've done around careers and transitions to deepen our learning and deepen our understanding. You also get to hear a school's perspective from Mr. Linden about what they're doing specifically around transitions within Walnut Grove. And to start tonight's presentation, you get to hear from Mr. Pugh in terms of where we are when we look at the 23-24 data around successful transitions.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent Bradford. Good evening. I think our data here today is a showcase and a celebration of where we've been able to get to but also a very clear roadmap in terms of where we need to go in the future. We continue to see great results. And so if you remember from previous times, we've talked about the completion rates and how those are calculated, and that what it means for a 5-year versus a 6-year completion rate. So in this case, 5-year means a student who starts grade 8, are they successful in meeting all the necessary criteria 5 years later? So a standard 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 trip through the system measuring there. And you can see the results, the top line, the dark blue being all learners, the green line representing those results for Indigenous learners, the orange line representing specifically diverse learners, and then the purple line representing children and youth in care. And you can see how we have continued to climb over the past few years. We can also see a sudden dip in children and youth in care. Part of that is related to the incredibly small population that fits within there. But it's also important for us to know that within that group, we know every single one of those students. And we know the transition that they are on through different district staff, school-based staff, and as a team, at the district-based team. And so what we also notice when we look at this is, as Deputy Superintendent Bradford talked about earlier, is the effect of ensoling our schools being that compass. And that dotted blue line there shows roughly around the time as to when we as a district brought in that compass of ensoling our schools. And you can see the distinct trajectory change for students. We can also see if we say, let's give them one more year, because we know that learning is a journey that takes patience and time. And so while it may work for many to complete within 5 years, some may need more time. And we see increasing results. We see those same high results for students or for children and youth in care. We see increasing success, meaning that students are receiving the supports they need and moving on and transitioning out of the system to see success. And once again, if you look for where ensoling our schools comes into play, you can see the distinct difference in the results and that sudden increase for many of our learners. With a specific focus on, we saw incredible success for our priority learners, for Indigenous students, students with diverse abilities, and children, youth in care. And so this is one of the main focuses that we have in terms of measuring that transition success at the end of the story in the K-12 system. But there is other data that we want to share and that start to help us to ask some questions that may serve some wonders. One of them is a grade to grade transition. So what this shows is it was looking specifically at cohorts over 4 years, where they started in grade 8, the percentage that were still there in grade 9, the percentage that were still in the correct grade at grade 10, grade 11, grade 12, and then into completion. And over those 4 years, we see the same pattern when we compare. This comes out of the Aboriginal Education How Are We Doing report. When we compare specifically Indigenous students with non-Indigenous students, we see this same pattern. And I go back only 4 years because that's how far I had with respect to the data, but the trend was very similar when we talked to others over and over. Some gradual changes to grade 11, with then some very distinct differences for both Indigenous and non-Indigenous learners, but within that gap happening at grade 10 or grade 11, more specifically at grade 12, and then into completion. And so we've spent a lot of time talking about how are we ensuring success and support at the end of the journey. And then we saw this one this year. And we see, if you actually compare the numbers, the end result is basically identical. But what we notice is that distinct drop off for Indigenous students happening earlier. And with that cohort, this was the first time we saw a pattern like this where that drop off started in grade 9. And so that leads us to wonder, Is this a representation of a cohort? Is it an ongoing pattern of, in terms of where they were in the journey? Is it a need for us to ask about additional supports lower down in the grade? These are all questions that we as a team, as we work through the framework, would ask and would look into. But it's important, it was just interesting to me as I looked at this, a very distinct difference in the pattern that we had seen from previous years. The other thing I want to go back and talk about is children and youth in care. And it's important, especially when we're dealing with a very small cohort, to understand the incredible power and importance of story and context for each of these children. You can see here, this comes also from the Aboriginal How Are We Doing report. Looking at the percentages of students, their 6-year completion rates, with the green bar representing Indigenous students, the blue bar representing non-Indigenous students. And we see with a cohort that size, roughly those bars remaining about the same, with maybe somewhere in the range of 5 or 6 out of 10 children and youth in care successfully completing within 6 years. The important thing to take note here, though, is that if there are any students in our system that really require that additional time, it is often held in the story of children and youth in care as the priority learner. Because if we look at their actual graduation rate for the time they become eligible, so what this means is that as a student, when I reach to the grade 12 level and I am registered in all the courses I need to be successful to graduate, we are graduating children and youth in care at over 90%. We're seeing even better results for Aboriginal students in care. And we know from the data that Indigenous students in care, Indigenous students are overrepresented in that child and youth in care piece. And so while we have an incredible roadmap from the data that celebrates success and shows us the successes that we have a great idea of where we need to go next and what we need to be able to do. How do we help children and youth in care specifically reduce that time? Because we know when we get them eligible for grade 12 and we're able to have all of those pieces of support and that they're ready, that they will graduate. So how do we get them there in the work we do going forward? And one of those ways that we can do that and support is through the work of careers. And I will now hand it over to my colleague, District Principal Simonetto, to share the ongoing story of careers in the district.
Good evening. As Deputy Superintendent Bradford and District Principal Mr. Pugh indicated, we hope to be able to share with you more of the capture of the story of the how. We've been able to see some of the success that has happened in the data trends that we've been able to witness. And now we'd like to share some of the storytelling. How do you share story at the system level, at the district level? And then how do you also share it at the school level, at the personal level? So as we look at enrolling our schools, and we know that we are engaging in the heart through human and social development, and we are engaging in the mind in intellectual development, career development, also a key pillar towards the educated citizen, is the weaving of those pieces together to be able to ensure successful transitions are the outcome. In career education, you've heard this from me before, we often ask children the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And we really do want to change the language to who do you want to be in this world? The children or the young adults that we have in our schools already have the skills and strengths and gifts within them. And it is our responsibility as schools and staff to be able to foster that and empower the students to become their best version of self, to fulfill their greatest possibilities. So when we look at career education as a department, there's some key work that we've been trying to engage in the last 6 months. Looking at the data trends that showed themselves as we worked on the framework for enhancing student learning, we wanted to take that opportunity with the lens of priority learners to honor the work that has historically been done in career education over the last decade and more, to ensure successful transitions were at the core of our shared work. Career development is everyone's work. It is not in isolation. It is carried in the portfolios of everyone in our district. So how do we ensure that we honor the historical alignment that we've been working with, but also look into the future of what our students are telling us they need to ensure career development is meeting the needs of the learners? So through a revisioning process over the last 6 months, career education has articulated some key aspects that we want to see live and breathe in our everyday schools classrooms, ensuring that career education provides access points for all. Do priority learners see themselves in career education? Do priority learners see themselves in the pathways we offer and the opportunities we offer to explore? To ensure that we offer expansion of opportunities, to ensure that we are at the core of the work we do, exploring student self-discovery, students understanding who they are already and what they want to bring into this world in the future. So all learners are empowered to navigate meaningful future pathways. That is part of the how. And as we said earlier, the compass, while we all share that compass, it would be the hope of career education that every child feels that they hold their own compass, and that they know the destination that they want to get to, and that they know the people who can help them to get there. And despite the twists and turns that they may have to navigate, they will be able to still reach their destination. So as we look at the framework for enhancing student learning and the goals that were outset in the beginning of the year, we wanted to give you some progress updates. While we are only halfway through, there's some great opportunities to share of things that are already in progress. The capstone is a key aspect, as we know, a part of the graduation requirement for all students as they engage in their grade 12 graduation year into the future. Wanting to ensure that priority learners are at the core of the work that we do with our capstone. Tremendous work was done historically in the career department to align capstone experiences, and it is embedded in our truly universal design for learning aspect for students to have voice and choice in the creation of their capstone. That is a robust learning opportunity, and having just gone, many of us going to capstone experiences over the past 2 weeks, it is an inspiring experience to hear a student share their journey through their capstone. So ensuring that the diverse learner capstone booklet is embedded and not known by all, but also utilizing the PLC teams that work in our schools to understand how department heads can help facilitate this leadership in the secondary schools. Are we aligned in our capstone processes? Our priority learners finding success in the capstone process, and our department heads facilitating those pieces. So engaging in those ongoing conversations, that has already been taking place and will continue to happen throughout the course of this remaining months of the year. When we look at expanding pathways and opportunities, we have many exciting announcements for you or pieces to share. The biomedical dual credit program, which we were able to speak to earlier in the year, is now accepting applications with a launch of a first cohort in the February of 2026. We anticipate this to be highly desirable by many students, offering an opportunity to go into a career path in our province that is of great demand. So an exciting opportunity there. The STRIVE program is an opportunity for students who may not be on the track towards post-secondary, and offering them an opportunity to engage in sociology course at KPU through the KPU Surrey, and being able to do that in a very highly supportive environment. So there are peer mentors embedded into the program. They have opportunities for different accessibility, and it is a free course. So we have 14 students for the first time attending the STRIVE program. We are excited to add a few welding seats to our Youth Train and Trades program. We have quite a robust Youth Train and Trades program in the Langley School District, and welding is a highly desirable piece, so adding 2 seats there in our partnership with Surrey. We're also excited to offer an experiential learning opportunity for grade 10 students in the Health Career Experiential Grant, 30 spots that will be offered for between April and June, where students can dig into their aspirations in health careers and to understand what those post-secondary opportunities look like at 3 different post-secondary institutions. They get to get first aid training, and they also engage in cultural sensitivity training, which will be an important tool as they engage in their future possible pathways in health career. Finally, As a department, we are looking at our own processes, our own documents, and our own materials, and to ensure that we are engaging an opportunity for families to see themselves in our materials. Do they see themselves through accessibility, engaging families who might be English as a second language, for students who are priority learners to see that the opportunity in the brochure is an opportunity for them, not to see any barriers, but rather to see the chance for the next step. So a deep dive has been done into our processes and our documents to be able to ensure that that is enhanced, and we will continue to do that work as we move forward as well. And finally, successful transitions, which is the umbrella conversation we are having tonight. The district has engaged, the district leadership team has engaged in ongoing conversations in multiple versions of meetings with administrators to discuss what is happening at the site level to ensure successful transitions, from a student case study to wider systems of support to teams that wrap around a student and work with the family to ensure that they reach success. Those granular details are the nuggets of the story that help us to understand what is working and ways that we can further enhance supports. To also engage the PLC structure that is in our schools already to enhance the team aspect of proactive planning and supports versus reactive. Engaging schools in those conversations at the school-based team level, through the family of schools extended school-based team supports, through the district-based team model that is now in place. And then of course, some schools are even incorporating attendance tracking in those proactive transition conversations to understand how we can support students earlier. So these progress reports are just some updates from a system level to be able to understand what the district's initiatives are doing in terms of our work within the framework for enhancing student learning and the strategic plan. But to be able to share that story in greater depth at the site level, I now invite Principal of Walnut Grove Secondary, Jeremy Linden, to share.
Thank you very much. They're so good at transitioning between. I feel like there's a lot of pressure right here on just transitioning into this piece here. So again, thank you to my colleagues. It's an honor to be able to present here a little bit in terms of how we are supporting successful transitions at Walnut Grove Secondary. It is indeed a journey. So I'm going to share some of the systems and structures and processes that we have in place. I do want to echo some of what's already been said in terms of careers and career education sort of being the thread that flows through from 8 to 12, K to 12 in terms of that lens through which we look at helping students transition from grade to grade, et cetera, in terms of exploring themselves, in terms of who they are as people, as they mature through grade 8 to 12, and then exploring different pathways that are available to them as they approach graduation. So I'm going to touch on all of these things up here today. So in terms of transitioning from elementary to secondary, from course to course, term to term, semester to semester, grade to grade, year to year, all that fun stuff. And then of course, graduation to post-secondary. It's really timely. We are in the middle of a big transition period right now. Semester 1 has just ended. Semester 2 starts tomorrow. We did have the opportunity to present, I think it was last year, on some of the work that we were doing around transitioning our elementary students into the secondary school. So just to review in terms of some of the pieces that we have in place there, we have a couple of middle school blocks, and that goes to support our GQ program, so Gator Quality Ambassador program, and their role. We have over 100 students enrolled in that this year, grade 11 and 12 students, who work with grade 8s transitioning into our building from September to end of first semester. And now we're shifting the focus to supporting the grade 7s coming in to us in September. So we just had them yesterday. We just had all 360 some odd grade 7s at the school yesterday, and they went through a program that was entirely run by our GQs. And so it was a fantastic experience. I sent the video to some folks about everybody doing the Gator Chomp, which you all did last year. I remember that. We did it well. So in terms of some other pieces around transitions, the way we like to kind of frame it is the same way that we're trying to frame RTI in our schools around responding to the needs of our students. So there's some pieces that all students get. So a good example of that would be the the transition day that we had yesterday, all the grade 7s were there. There's some pieces that some students are going to get. Gator Shades is an excellent example of that. So some of the students that we know might be a little anxious coming to the high school at grade 8, we work with our elementary colleagues to figure out who are the students who would best be served by attending a program like that. And then there's some of the transition work that we do for few students. So some of those kids who have really unique needs that we need to pay attention to, and we go in terms of a bit of a deeper dive in terms of supporting those priority learners as they transition to us. So this is really where we are right now around supporting at the end of a term or end of a semester. And so what we do in terms of courses and coursework, at the end of every term, so 2 terms in a semester, we generate a list of students who are at risk of not successfully completing a course. And so we start with our counseling and admin team, and we go through all of those kids, and we end up splitting that out by alpha with each counselor and vice principal. And we make sure that there is somebody who's attached to that kid to make sure that there's a plan in place. So again, we're a pretty large school with just about 2,200 students. And so it's really important that we have these big systems that catch some of this stuff, and then we provide ownership to folks to support those kids as they transition. And hopefully successfully complete that course at the end of the semester. And at the end of a semester, again, where we are now, we'll have students who are pulling that same kind of data, who was successful, who wasn't, and then what does that mean? So the last couple of days, we've been having a lot of transition meetings, VPs meeting with teachers and counselors and supports to say, okay, the student was not successful in this course. What are we doing about that? So in some cases, it might be the best thing is they're going to repeat a course. In other cases, it might be, you know what, they're really only missing this piece, these prioritized learning standards. And so we've got a plan in place, and they could collect that in a different course or through a resource block or those kinds of things. And then we're also looking at, when we get to the year, we look at promotional meetings in terms of grade to grade transitions. And so are they ready to move on to grade 10 or enter the grad program from grade 9 to 10, that kind of thing. We look at course requests, which is coming up as well, to make sure that grad requirements are all met and making sure they've got the prerequisites and setting them up to be successful. So that's a lot of the work that's happening right now at semester end, and it will start again and intensify when we get to year end. So when we look at graduation, it would be a mistake to think of grade 12 as only the pathway for graduation. And really this transition starts as they're entering grade 8. And what we see in terms of the careers piece again is an increase in ownership over the transitions that students are making. And so as they grow from grade 8 to 12, they're taking a little bit more ownership over the pathways that they're choosing, that they're interested in. And so what our job is to make sure that those students are set up well as they enter the grad program, and they have all of those different pathways available to them, and that they're aware of what those different pathways look like. So some examples around that are, we do right now over the transition days, our counselors have been doing grad chats with our grade 11 students. So they've invited open invitation to all the grade 11s to come in and, okay, if you're interested in nursing, come on this day and this time, and we'll walk you through what some of those prerequisites look like. You're interested in engineering, trades, whatever that might be. So again, kids are able to choose which pathways they're interested, come to all of them, come to some of them, totally up to them. When we're course planning with students, we make sure that they've got a buffer. As you know, 80 credits to satisfy the graduation requirements. And we always want to make sure that nobody's kind of flirting with that line right on the 80 credits. And most of our kids graduate with well over 80 credits, but that's kind of a line sort of that we have. And then as we look at grade 12s, and going back to the term to term, semester to semester transitions, we look at a little bit more of an intense process around making sure that we put everything in place so that kids can cross that stage and move on to post-secondary, whatever it is that they've got planned for themselves. So we've got 3 categories that we, again, will be looking at very shortly here as final grades come in for the semester. There will be students who may not be eligible to graduate. They might have failed something first semester that they needed for graduation. So we're looking at, okay, can they get those credits with us? What other things do we need to look at? That might be, okay, where they're going to be with us, they're going to take an LEC course, and we can get them there. In some cases, it might be an additional support through summer learning. That's possible. We look at students who are not passing a course required for graduation. And again, very similar to the previous slide around term to term transitions, making sure that those supports are in place for those kids. And then what I call the bubble letter, the kids who are kind of just, yep, things are going okay, but they're a little closer to that line than we might like them to be. So we make sure that we're wrapping around those kids as well. So that's really what we're doing around graduation. And again, there's a ton of conversations that go on with our grade 12s when they're in grade 12, and of course leading up to grade 12 as well. I would note as well, I've been fortunate to be at 3 secondary schools as an admin, and every school has some version of some of these transition plans. And I've been fortunate to be able to work again at Brookswood and learn from a few folks in this room around how we successfully transition folks. Again at Aldergrove when I was there, and then here at Walnut Grove also. So in terms of some opportunities that we've been thinking about at Walnut Grove, where we can improve some of the transition work that we're doing, is looking at utilizing our data better and using some data to track grade to grade. So are we seeing trends in terms of when a student's in grade 8, are they struggling with the same things in grade 9? And can we drill down to why is that happening? And can we put some interventions in place around that? Looking at the level to level transitions, so utilizing some of the elementary data that we have access to. We just started looking at some of the FSA data around grade 8s and starting to think about how do we plan for some interventions around literacy and numeracy as students are coming into our school, and using those grade 8 and 9 years to make sure that we kind of fill in some of those gaps in learning to get them ready for the grad program. Earlier interventions and not waiting till they kind of get to that place and sort of hit that wall. So that's a big piece that we're looking at Walnut Grove. And I think there's some work to be done around us aligning some of the practices that we're doing at secondary schools. And we've started some of this at recent networking meetings where we're sharing, what are you doing around this transition? What are you doing around that? How are you supporting literacy? How are you supporting numeracy? And those have been really rich conversations. And I think we're at our best when we're learning from each other in terms of what we're doing across the secondary world. So with that, I think I'm transitioning back to Deputy Superintendent Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Linden. So just in conclusion, when we think about the information you've heard tonight, just want to recognize the fact that it's the work that goes on in our classrooms. That's where it begins, through the lens of intellectual development, human and social, and careers and transitions. And it then forms the information that we have that populates our action plans for learning, which in turn then populates our framework for enhancing student learning and gives us our strategic plan in terms of the direction we are heading. So the bridge between each one of those layers are highly effective teams working together. You will notice in the framework for enhancing student learning and our strategic plan, professional learning communities are a key strategy for us to be successful, specifically in transitions. So we stand before you tonight and present the information on successful transitions. These are highly effective teams that are working in our schools and at our systems level to ensure every student is successful. And we recognize that we are not there yet. As Mr. Pugh shared tonight, we are not at 100%. We know there is still work to do. And we know that we cannot do this work by ourselves. It is going to take highly effective teams. And I heard a presentation the other day from our Director of Instruction, George Kozovic, who said professional learning communities are a way of being. And the way of being in terms of getting to 100% within our district is continuing to push that urgency around the importance of highly effective teams at the classroom level, at the school level, and at a systems level. Because ultimately what you want is when that bus ride to successful transitions goes and whatever it may be, 5 years, 6 years, or whatever those years are for that student, that when they exit that bus and they shed the backpack for cap and gown, that they realize that they have hope in their career and their life to achieve the goals that they want to achieve, and that they're going to have a positive impact on others. And that's the ride we want every one of our students on. So with that, we'll take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here this evening and for the incredible presentation. I'm always inspired when you guys come and give us updates on what's happening in our schools. Pretty amazing. I saw a quick hand up from Trustee Ward, so I will pass the mic over to him first.
Thank you very much. This is not really going to be a question, but it's just I'm transitioning to point out the fantastic slides that we've been having. That's one thing, but that is a great picture. But it's right in Abbotsford. I can tell where it is. But no, but seriously, when I look at, I'm not even a numbers guy necessarily, but you can't help be because part of our mandate as trustees is to improve student outcomes. But you guys are doing the work that really we're just this higher governance role, but you guys are running highly effective for a long time. So I'm looking at, not that we want to compare against the rest of the province necessarily, and we're not there yet. And I appreciate what you've said, but you've done very, very well. Like landing here 6-7 years ago as a school trustee, you guys were already highly effective, yet still incrementally improving. And I look at 2000s, just so the public knows, 2017, 2018, our district had 85% transition rates for 5 years and 90.1 for 6 years. The province was 83.2 and 88.5 respectively. So the difference there is 1.8 for 5 year. Yet in 7 years, our district's at 93.6 for 5 year and 95.8 for 6 year. That's phenomenal. And the 5 year, now the province improved as well, but not at the rate that Langley did. So I give you congratulations. We're looking at 93.6 for 5 year. And the 5 year for the province is 86.6. So if my math is, well, roughly, whatever, 7%, something along those lines. And for 6 year, it's 4.4% difference. So I just want to applaud you guys. Like, you make us look good, even though you're the ones who are doing the heavy lifting. So you are a highly effective team, and I thank you for your good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other trustees have any questions or comments? No? Okay, thank you so much for being here this evening. Oh, okay, Trustee Ryan. Put your mic on, Trustee Ryan.
Just the timing of your presentation was great this evening because my son just did his presentation for his capstone project, and he's a diverse learner. And the amount of work that his resource teachers, himself, and the amount of work they put in to make him succeed. I spent 4 days working on it with him through the semester break because he was doing his presentation, just going over the reading, the pictures, all the work that they did, all the work that he did. And today, as he was driving, he wants to graduate so badly, does not want another year of school. So he was just like, Mom, will I do okay in my presentation? Will my interview go well? What if I mess up? I'm like, you're not going to mess up. Just think about the fundamentals that you're learning at school. And that's what you've applied at your capstone. And his project did touch home to, it was very, it was something that he could relate to because we do a lot of gardening and things at home too. So it was awesome. Today I was with him and I just sat there and watched him do his presentation. And it was a very proud moment for me. So when I saw your guys' presentation and your slides, I could totally relate to it today because I've gone through it firsthand with him and it was awesome. So thank you for everything that you guys do for all these kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other trustees? Okay, so do I have a mover, please, for the recommended motion that the Board of Education receives the report on careers and transitions, actions, and data for information as presented? Moved by Trustee Dickinson, seconded by Trustee Neufeld. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. All right, moving along to number 7 on our agenda, Secretary Treasurer's reports. The first item is 7.1, annual review of trustee remuneration. Maybe I'll start by, or should I pass it over to you just to explain this? Or I'll get a mover for the recommended motion, and then I may ask you to just sort of explain the history, if that's okay. Okay. So do I have a mover, please, for the recommended motion that the Board of Education approves the increase of 1.8% effective January 1st, 2025, based on the 12-month change in Canada Consumer Price Index, CPI, in accordance with Board Policy 7, Board Operations, Section 11, and to update the salaries in Policy 7, Board Operations, Section 11.1, with the new salaries. Do I have a mover? Moved by Trustee Dickinson. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Trustee Ward. Okay, so I'm going to just pass this over to you, Secretary Treasurer Isley. If you don't mind, just give us a little bit of history of sort of how this came about on as policy on an annual. Do you mind? Okay, thank you.
Trustees may recall, prior to the current policy, there was policy stated that the outgoing board would, at the end of their 4-year term, appoint a committee of community members to recommend to that board what the pay increases would be for the incoming board. Those raises always then were pretty substantive, and percentage-wise at least, because they hadn't been given raises over a 4-year period. That last committee, when they did make the recommendation on raises, also made a recommendation for a potential policy change, that trustee remuneration would be done on an annual basis, and then it would be done on the CPI index, and then voted on by the board. So the board took that recommendation and now has that in Policy 7, Section 11, which outlines the compensation, and that every January it shall be adjusted based on the Canadian Consumer Price Index, as subject to board approval. So in your package is that process and the 1.8%, which is what the CPI went up as of the 12 months to December of 2024 from 2023.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer. Do I have any discussion? Yep. Trustee Ward and Trustee Dickinson, and then Trustee Neufeld. Okay. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Secretary Treasurer Isley clarified the reason why. So yeah, we ran into this before as a previous board, knowing that this can always be, when it comes to governance, the public should know how much they're that they're paying their public servants when it comes to governance. So and sometimes when we see in private enterprise, we see people voting for their own raises, and it seems kind of feels kind of awkward, but we're in this kind of position. So we tied it to the CPI as mentioned. And so I kind of ran the numbers just so that the public is aware of what they're getting when we're kind of tying it in here. Very similar to what we do with respect to if you're in a union and you have a collective agreement. This is not a raise, this is a cost of living adjustment. Obviously, everything is more expensive. Trustees are free to vote otherwise, but we are compensated for a governance role. So currently, as noted, I think I'm fair to say this, trustees had in the previous, I'm fair to mention all this, in 2024, so trustee remuneration was 33,047, so 33,047, vice chair 34,210, chair 35,367. The total is 234,812. So our range goes approximately from 2/3 of the average. Mr. Bradford could correct me on some of this, but 2/3 of the average to up to 1/9 of SD 35 employees rates. So from low to high, we do about 1/5 to 1/9 remuneration of senior staff. Obviously, it's a different role, and every employee that we have amongst the 2,000 plus employees is worth every penny that we pay them. We don't pay them, but we through staff administer that. But having said that, this is a governance role. So with all that said and done, we go from 234,812 per year collectively to $239,040 for an increase of 4,228 for the course of the year. That is an increase for the average trustee of $595 for the year, which equals 49 and change, about $50 a month, minus tax, I guess, and then up to 53 for the chair, and a little bit 51, I think, for the vice chair, Marnie. And so that's what it kind of works out to be. And again, this is a cost of living adjustment. So I think it makes sense. It's an easy thing. I do understand the temptation that we all have to try to, I want to look good in front of the public and say, hey, you know what? We don't need a raise. After all, you know, it's for the kids. And that makes sense. And we could all do this on a pro bono. If we wanted to, we could vote that way, or somebody could choose to not accept the cost of living adjustment or any wage for that matter if they chose, and that's totally up to them, and I respect each and everyone's choice in the matter. But it is compensated based on your acumen, your competency, the fact that we all knew what we were putting ourselves forward for when we ran, and this reflects that same wage, just adjusted for the devaluation of our currency that happens, which is what we call inflation. So printing of money devalues currency, makes our dollars less valuable. So therefore we adjust accordingly, and all staff, we do that for all staff across the board. So that's my long-winded version of just saying that's why I would support this, and I'll support it ongoing because it gets us out of voting every 4 years, and it doesn't have to be political at all. So I think it's an easy one, just in perpetuity, just to say it makes sense. It's CPI. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Dickinson.
I echo a lot of the thoughts that Trustee Ward just mentioned. I appreciate the forward thinking of the last board to try to alleviate the awkwardness of this, because it's awkward. And I really appreciate that it is tied to the CPI, so it's not like, you know, elected officials are going out there trying to get a ton of extra money. It's based on the CPI, and that's what we're voting for. So I will be voting in favor of this tonight.
Thank you. Trustee Neufeld. You're good? You're sure? Okay. Sorry, I thought you did put up your hand, but okay. Okay, any other discussion on the motion? No? Okay, so seeing no other hands, could I please have a show of hands for those in favor? Opposed? Okay, carried with 3 in favor, 2 opposed. Moving along to 7.2, Southwest Latimer Area Land Purchase Bylaw 2025. I will pass this over to you, Secretary Treasurer Isley.
Thank you, Chair. Trustees, you'll find in your package a land purchase bylaw for a property in the Southwest Latimer area. It's a property we've discussed many times in the past. Due to the rapid growth in Willoughby Slope, the 5-year capital plan that we submitted to the Ministry of Education and Childcare requested a elementary school site in the Southwest Latimer area. This last March, when we had our response letter to our capital plan submission, we received approval to move to the next steps on acquiring that site and working towards a purchase price. Staff have been working with the developer to do that. Unfortunately, we couldn't come to a price, but luckily we do have an option agreement on that property that we triggered and when walked through that process over the last number of months to come up to a price. That price was determined for $32,496,000 for the 4.942 acres. That price was determined November 28th, 2024. Per the option, the district now has 90 days to exercise that option. So we have until February 26th, 2025 to exercise that option. As part of that, we need board approval via bylaw, which is here tonight for the trustees to approve, but also approval from the Ministry of Funding of the purchase of that site, which we have submitted to the ministry staff and are awaiting a response back to them, which we hope to get before that February 26th date. If that does happen and the board approves the bylaw tonight, we would then close the purchase 30 days after we exercise that option.
Thank you, trustees. Before we go ahead with, we have several motions before us. Maybe, is there any questions that any of you have? No? Okay. All right. Well, we will start with our motions. So the first, our first recommended motion is that the Board of Education of School District number 35, Langley, Southwest Latimer area, land purchase bylaw 2025 be given first reading. Do I have a mover? Moved by trustee Rye, seconded by trustee Dickinson. Okay, any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Trustee Rye, you're in favor? Yeah, okay, sorry, I didn't see your hand. Okay, and no opposed, so carried unanimously. Next recommended motion is that the Board of Education of School District number 35 Langley, Southwest Latimer area land purchase bylaw 2025 be given second reading. Do I have a mover, please? Moved by trustee Ward, seconded by trustee Dickinson. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Next recommended motion is that the Board of Education of School District number 35 Langley unanimously approves having all three readings of Southwest Latimer area land purchase bylaw 2025 at tonight's meeting. Do I have a mover? Moved by trustee Dickinson, seconded by trustee Ward. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Next, do I have a mover, please, that the Board of Education of School District number 35 Langley unanimously approves having all three readings of Southwest Latimer area land purchase bylaw 2025 at tonight's meeting. Do I have a mover, please? Move. Oh, did I already do that one? My goodness. Sorry, I'm reading my notes and I already said that one. Okay, my apologies. The correct motion that the Board of Education of School District number 35 Langley, Southwest Latimer area land purchase bylaw 2025 be given third reading, passed and adopted on the 28th day of January 2025. Moved by trustee Dickinson, seconded by trustee Rye. Any discussion on the motion? See no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. All right. Sorry, and I'm losing my voice and then I have to speak on these ones. So, okay, moving along to number 8 on our agenda is policy committee. So trustees, you have 3 policies in front of you this evening from the policy committee. And we'll start with policy 3. Just bear with me while I get to my correct window here. So we have a recommended motion this evening that the Board of Education approves policy 3, appendix A, services, materials, and equipment provided to trustees as presented. Do I have a mover? Moved by trustee Dickinson, seconded by trustee Rye. And I will just make note that this is coming from policy. We've gone back and forth a little bit on this one, but to allow virtual attendance. Oh, sorry, my goodness. No, I'm really losing it tonight. My apologies. It's laptop. So yeah, so we just added laptop and removed the word iPad. And then both items are to be returned at the completion of the term. So, okay, any discussion on the motion? Nope, seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Oh, you're opposed, sorry. Oh, my apologies. Okay, so opposed, so trustee Dickinson opposed. Okay. And everybody else was in favor though. Great. Okay, now we're on policy 7. So policy 7 did come to the last regular board meeting, or it was back at the October. Oh, sorry, just let me get my date straight here. It was what was the date? October the 22nd. So, and then we did send it back to policy committee to make a few adjustments. Policy committee did work on those adjustments. We're happy with sending it back to the board. So policy committee is now bringing this forward to the board and recommending that the Board of Education serves notice of motion to the district's education community and its education partner groups that it intends to adopt the revisions to policy 7, board operations of the April 29th, 2025 regular board meeting. Do I have a mover for that motion? Okay, moved by trustee Ward, seconded by trustee Neufeld. Any discussion on the motion? No? You thinking? Trustee Ward.
Yeah, this is, I mean, I support the motion. There has been a lot of back and forth on this, and we can always amend these things in the future in case we think that something's not working out or a future board might want to adjust some of this. The idea here was to accommodate a one-off situation for a trustee if they can't make a meeting for an extraordinary circumstance. So we wanted to make meetings quorum if possible and provide allowances that were reasonable. So I believe this does that. And if we want to adjust it another time, we may. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? Questions or comments? No? Okay. Could I please have a show of hands for all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. And now moving on to the last policy this evening before you. Coming again from the policy committee, the recommended motion is that the Board of Education serves notice of motion to the district's education community and its education partner groups that it intends to adopt the revisions to policy 19, naming of schools at the April 29th, 2025 regular board meeting. Do I have a mover, please, for that motion? Moved by trustee Rye, seconded by trustee Dickinson. So this was just found that it needed an update because the original policy stated that the requirement for permission to use the name of a deceased person, but it did not specify the requirement for permission to use the name of a living person. So this policy was just updated to that which staff brought forward and recommended. So any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing no discussion, could I please have a show of hands for all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay, moving along now to a new business. We did have BCST motions on our agenda, but I did not receive any before and just wanted to make sure nobody had any last minute motions to bring forward. Oh, okay. So we will then move along to trustee comments. And I will start on my far right then with trustee Ward. If you'd like to say anything.
I've said plenty tonight, but I just thank you for our partner group showing up and anybody who's tuned in online. And thank you again to staff and to everybody. Thank you.
Trustee Uriah or Newfeld, would you like anything? No? Okay. All right, no other trustee comments. So I will move on to question period. Question period is provided at board meetings. The purpose is to ensure that those present in the audience have an opportunity to obtain clarification concerning business conducted during that meeting. Priority will be given to responding to one question per person before considering further questions from any individual. The following will help the public develop questions for question period at a board meeting that is keeping with the goal of a respectful and focused meeting. Questions need to be directed to the chair and not to staff, need to be related directly to the topic on the agenda, need to be succinct, focused, and not be a statement, may not be asked that are related to personnel or directed at an individual trustee, may not be asked that are related to contract negotiations, and the questioner shall provide their name so that it can be reflected in the minutes. All of the above are directions provided for in board policy number 7, board operations. The chair may answer, may defer to staff, or indicate a question may not be in keeping with the above guidelines. The board appreciates the public's interest and wants to ensure a professional meeting is conducted with question period focused on providing guests with the clarification they seek. Trustees also welcome questions from members of the public. Apart from question period, their contact information is available on the school district website. My apologies, I'm losing my voice, it seems, this evening. Okay, so do we have any questions from the email?
Hi, Neil Turner. Wanted to ask a question about the transition data a little bit. One thing is just looking at the data, I'm wondering why we're doing way better than the province. And I'll ask twofold. One is, do we know characteristically why we're doing so well? And the other thing is between the 5 and 6 year plan, 5 and 6 year transition. In Langley, I think there's a 2.2% difference, but in the province, it's 4.8. Like there's a big gap between the 5 and 6 year. Any rationale behind what we're doing or not doing in those gaps?
Superintendent, would you like to answer this, or?
I can certainly take a run at it. I think at the end of the day, why is Langley doing so well as opposed to the province? Remember, we have a province that's, quite diverse, and so opportunities for students are great. I'd like to think that we have a plan in place working with our partner groups, our teachers, our SEAs, counselors, etc. We have a support network that's amazing in our schools that work really almost tirelessly to ensure that all of our kids are heard, all of their stories are heard. You heard this evening through the presentation that we do try and ensure that of the 26,000 students here, that we hear the stories of every single one. And we don't get all of the stories. We don't get all the students across the finish line like we want to. And I think clearly our staff feels like as much as we're proud of where we are, we've got a ton of work still to do. And I think that mindset of continuous improvement is just something that we collectively have in the district. And we'll continue to have that until we get to a place where 100% of our students are graduating. As far as your second question around the differential between the 5 and 6 year rates, truthfully, I don't look too much at that comparison between our district and provincial rates. I'm focused in more, and collectively as a team, we're more focused in on Langley and where we are and how we're doing. And so I don't really, give too much credence around whether they're 4% or 2%. I know that as far as the work that we do, as far as whether a student graduates in 5 years or 6 years or 7 or 8, we have systems and structures through not just through our high schools, but through our alternate programs and through our adult programs that we're continuing to work with students as best we can, so that we can get them to the finish line when they're ready and in whichever time span makes sense for them.
Yeah. Good. Thanks.
Thank you. Do you have another question? It doesn't look like anybody else is lined up. So
I'll do one more.
Go ahead.
'Cause we're on
Okay.
math tonight. Percentages are great, but as we see, and this is probably a little bit maybe for you in the numbers, is the grade 12 students that are graduating, obviously as our population builds, that builds as well. And then we look at percentages. Do we know how many students are not, like in that percentage, what is the student number? Because when we talk about every story and every student counting, if that number is getting bigger in that percentage because our growth is outgrowing our transition rate a little bit, is that a true
Yeah,
picture or is that false?
Consistently by cohort, we're sitting somewhere around 200 to 225 students that aren't graduating. Of a cohort around, what are we looking at when Mr. Pugh's not here? Somewhere just over 2,000 students. And so, again, some people would say not a big number. For us, any single student is too many.
Yeah.
So we'll keep watching and continue to stay connected with that data.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have come to the end of our agenda. So do I have a mover, please, that the meeting be adjourned at 8:24 p.m. Moved by trustee Dickinson, seconded by trustee Neufeld. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. I didn't say opposed, but I saw all our hands go up, so it was unanimous. All right, have a good evening, everyone.